Philosophers love their thought experiments. So let's do a thought experiment. Imagine you take sentience and a piece of trash and you combine these two concepts. So you get a sentient piece of trash. In this thought experiment, we'd imagine that this self-aware sentient piece of trash doesn't feel too good about himself as he's self-aware and he's a piece of trash. The thought experiment predicts a self-conscious piece of trash. But a recent empirical observation of mine has falsified this prediction. Jimbob has an ego, a sense of superiority, despite being the literal equivalent of hideous trash on the bottom of your shoe. Some useless, discarded piece of trash rolls up onto you in the fall breeze, gets caught on your foot, and then, as you go to discard it, has an attitude problem, has an unchecked ego. An ego, you're discarded trash. And no different from how junk flops around in the wind aimlessly, Jimbob drifts from subject to subject, confidently inflicting his buffoonery and incompetence upon all of those he stumbles into, and as if he wasn't enough of a thorn in everyone's ass, he then goes and congratulates his buffoonery as expertise. And what about all the experts and people that recognize that he's an illiterate twit on the subjects that he confidently thinks he's revolutionized with his nonsense? What does he make of all those people? Well, that's a simple fix. They're all wrong! And not just wrong, but stupid. Why? Because Jimbob is a genius, a misunderstood genius. Yeah, that's it, a misunderstood genius. This guy is stupid enough to go the wrong direction on a highway and egotistical enough to flick you off while doing it. As a pastime, this asshole Jimbob spins up these extremely confused arguments, mushing together a bunch of different subjects and issues in a confused mess, tripping all over himself while doing it, making basic mistakes. When he's finally done being a fucking idiot, he moves on to being a massive dick. He rotates between these two things endlessly, and he goes, up till now, relatively unchecked. But recently, it seems he overstepped. He took his expertise in douchebaggery and sophistry and decided to go on a conquest. He was gonna set out, yeah, that's right, to disprove evolution. Yeah, sitting in his basement in between his racist jokes, making basic philosophical errors, and begging for a $5 super chat, he managed to make time for casually debunking evolution with minimal effort. Glad he could fit it into his busy schedule. I hope it didn't distract too much from his passionate hobby of misunderstanding most of philosophy. It seems he's making time for a new passion, misunderstanding most of science. And true to himself, like the absolute prick that he is, he projects his vile intellectual shortcomings on all scientists of the past 150 years. They are all obviously incorrect according to his stupid ass. He's falsified 150 years of scientific consensus with some basic considerations. And no, after all of that, after proclaiming his accomplishment to his community many times, his narcissism was not satisfied. This idiot thought it would be a good idea to publicly debate an actual professor, claiming that evolution is false and that he, the illiterate, dim-witted rat, was able to prove this. And as you might expect, the debate went something like this. Jimbob was used publicly as a tissue with which to wipe shit on, and then was promptly discarded and flushed like the dirty, used piece of garbage that he was. And thankfully, for the sake of our own amusement, Jimbob is resilient in the face of public catastrophe. Instead of keeping a low profile, this idiot decides to double down and cope, claiming that he won the interaction wherein he was demonstrably used as toilet paper to wipe shit. How did he win? Well, because of this 1-minute video.
Mutation is random, natural selection is not.
Okay, so then would you agree that from your perspective that the brain was a process of random mutations, produced by random mutations?
Brains in general and every other organ and every other aspect of all life ever. Yes.
Okay, so then, and it wasn't developed for any purpose, right?
No, not any inherent purpose, but it is useful, right? Animals with brains have processing ability, and then
Okay,
especially humans, we have this huge frontal lobe that is
I
capable of all
understand.
kinds of
I
complex
understand. But
thought
you would
process.
say that your brain has no real purpose, right?
It has no inherent purpose. I use it
Okay.
for the purpose of thinking.
Okay. But you know, it's not made for the purpose of thinking.
There is no God that on purpose made things with the purpose that
I didn't say
it's
God.
bestowed upon
No,
them.
God doesn't exist in this hypothetical.
Okay.
I just want
Uh,
you to
so then
understand from your
nothing. So
view.
then you would agree that nothing would have any kind of inherent purpose from a higher power. If it's all chance, then there's no inherent purpose to anything other than what proliferates due to conferring a survival advantage.
And so why would I listen to sounds coming from a purposeless brain?
Because I'm right.
Okay, seems like a normal interaction. On your view, minds don't have a purpose. Yeah, that's correct, they don't. Next. But no, of course not. Jimbob takes this normal interaction, misunderstands the implications that it has, and turns it into a victory. You know what he titled this 1-minute clip?
I got Professor Dave to say this.
Yeah, you did get him to say that because that's his view. And it's wrong because? Oh, right, no reason provided. Now, the only hint as to what the roach thinks he's getting at is his seemingly rhetorical question: if your brain wasn't designed for a purpose, why should I listen to you? So clearly the cockroach thinks that there's some sort of tension between not having a design and him listening to you. Further, the cockroach thinks that Dave is going to want to defend the position that the roach should listen to him. Now, all of these assumptions are just wrong or confused or don't prove anything. Why should I listen to you? Well, independent of whether or not my brain was designed for a purpose, I didn't say you have to listen to me. Do whatever the heck you want, you cockroach. But in this particular case, you're being a sophist cockroach. Now, if you don't want to be a contemptible twit, then you should probably listen to me. But ultimately, that will depend on your preferences. Your preferences and what will result from listening to a brain that happens to not be designed has got nothing to do with absolutely anything. It doesn't tell us whether or not evolution is true. It doesn't tell us whether or not your view is true. It doesn't pose a problem for Dave. Whether something was or was not created to serve a particular function doesn't tell us whether or not it would be good at serving that function, and whether or not you should listen to it. Now, of course, the cockroach didn't make this clear because he's incapable of clear, non-muddled thoughts and articulation of those thoughts. Everything he says is always some mumbo-jumbo of related concepts in some confused concoction. And we have to sit here and do roach psychology to figure out what this dim-witted klutz was trying to say. Is this idiot trying to say that he thinks something, in this case the brain, not being produced by an intentional creator, makes its function, like, illicit or called into question? How do you genuinely think that whether something was designed or not is going to cast doubt on whether or not that thing could reliably produce a particular function or result? How stupid. Let's mirror this argument.
The forest fire wasn't designed to burn me, so why should I run from it? The avalanche wasn't designed to crush me. I'm gonna stand here.
I don't think Jimbob was designed to be a persistent, cancerous weed, pain in everyone's ass piece of garbage. But clearly that doesn't prevent him from being one. So in conclusion, Jimbob's objection to evolution, that it leads to this insane, purposeless brain reductio, amounts to nothing more than an ambiguous and on its face useless criticism that upon disambiguation only worsens in its logical and dialectical appeal, as if his objection is merely his preference to not listen to brains that don't have a purpose, then he hasn't provided an argument and just stated his preference. Alternatively, if what he said was not merely his preference, but was meant to be stated as an objection to the view, we're going to have to assume this moron thinks that not having a purpose and reliably producing a result are mutually exclusive. At which point I would direct him to a stove oven that was not lit for any particular purpose and ask him to stick his stupid hand in there to test this incompatibility hypothesis of his. Anyway, I've talked about this despicable shit stain enough, so I'm going to end it here. Thank you for watching.